Welcome to the Alchemy for Authors podcast. I'm your host, Jo Buer. If you're an author, aspiring author, writer, or wordsmith, you're in the right place. Join me as I chat with authors and industry professionals and share my own experiences with using manifestation and mindset practices to supercharge our writing lives. We'll explore ways to overcome writer's block and imposter syndrome. We'll find motivation and inspiration to get our butts in the chair and our stories written. And most importantly, we'll embark on creating lives and livings doing what we love. If you've ever dreamed of a prolific, wealthy, happy or healthy author career or writing practice, then this show is for you. So let's dive into Alchemy for Authors. Hello, my friend. Thank you for joining me for episode 48 of Alchemy for Authors. I have such a fun episode for you this week. Midway through 2022, I started feeling just a little bit burnt out from writing Gothic fiction. So to take a little bit of a break, I decided to genre hop to writing a cozy mystery. And it was honestly exactly what I needed to fall in love again with story and with writing. Now, during this time, I also tried to really hone in on what made a mystery novel page-turning and engaging. And so I was so thrilled when today's guest reached out to be on the show. So today I am speaking with a best-selling medical mystery author with a passion for author well-being. So not only will you learn how to look after your health as a writer, which is so important if we want to make this a sustainable career, but you'll also learn the essential ingredients for writing a compelling mystery and why bad colleagues can make for good fictional murder victims. As an added bonus, make sure you check out the hand yoga video linked in the show notes as well. On a final note before we get started, I do want to apologize that in places of this recording, there are small parts that seem to just cut out, but I think that the quality of the content overall just makes up for these small inconveniences. If it's of concern though, the full transcript can always be found on my website too, so you don't miss out on anything. But whether you're looking for mindset, craft, or well-being tips, today's guest has you covered. So when you're ready, grab a drink, find a comfy chair, sit back, and enjoy the show. Hello, my lovelies. Welcome back to another episode of Alchemy for Authors. Today, I'm chatting with Amy S. Peele. Amy is the award-winning best-selling author of Cut, Match, and Hold, medical mysteries with a mission and a side of humor. Before becoming a writer, Amy enjoyed a fascinating 35-year career in the organ transplant field, which provides an authentic backdrop to her books. Amy is an accomplished speaker who regularly presents to prestigious U.S. medical centers, such as NYU, University of Chicago, University of Michigan, and UCLA, as well as writers' events. Her books have reached bestseller status on Amazon and gained national recognition with such awards as the NYC Big Book Award, Chanticleer International Book Awards, IPPY, and Independent Press Awards, and more. Amy loves to speak, swim, teach yoga, meditate, and kill the people she didn't like from work in her mysteries and use their organs, because why waste the kill? So I am so excited to have you here, Amy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here with you today.
Your bio alone, I have so much to talk to you about and ask about, but I would love to just start the show with you sharing a little bit about how your author journey began. What brought you to writing books?
Well, it's an interesting question. And I did a fun project with some girlfriends of mine. I don't know if you've heard of The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's a wonderful book. Yes, you know. And if your listeners haven't done it, it's such a fun creative journey. It certainly was for me and probably for you too. Because part of the workbook is like she has you like write down 10 things off the top of your head without screening them. Like, what would you like to do? What would you like to do? This was probably 25-ish over years ago, at least. And writing kept coming up. And I'm a nurse by training. And I kept thinking, I'm not a writer. Why does this writing thing keep this exercise, right? It's creative exercise. But it kept coming up enough that I thought, you know what? I don't think I am, but I'm going to go with it. And I found a writing class at our local junior college, College of Marin here in Northern California. And it was a creative class. And I went and I was nervous because while I have a nursing degree, I don't have an English degree or a literature degree and all these things I made up in my head for reasons why I couldn't be a writer. And truth be told, I wasn't a very good speller, but I am getting better. So I ended up taking these classes and got encouragement from a wonderfully generous teacher. Thank goodness that that's who my first writing teacher was. It wasn't a critical teacher. It was tell me more and you do these writing exercises. And so that was my journey into the writing world of which I knew little or nothing about. And now fast forward, here we are, how many years later, decades later, I am a writer. What I've learned from that little piece is that I'm a storyteller. Might not be a grammarian, but I can weave a good yarn and I'm a storyteller. So, but that was my first kind of entry in trusting that maybe I didn't think I was a writer, but finding a little class nearby that where I could go and have some fun and not be like getting a grade that was going to go on my GPA and, all those things some people worry about. So that's actually how I dipped my toe in the water for the first time and then started writing more and more. And then I self-published a memoir in 2009. And I had a whole journey since then, which we can talk about during the podcast, depending on your interests. But that was like the very, very early starting point. I did take a creative writing class as a senior in high school because I could. But then my path went more to healthcare as opposed to writing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I absolutely love The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. She is amazing. But I find it interesting that writing kept coming up for you when you were writing that list as to things that you wanted to do in that. But there was that doubt and everything around that. Did you have clues as a child or growing up that maybe you had an interest in writing, or was it really quite out of the blue?
I'm going to go out of the blue. I think as a kid, no, I was outside running barefoot, very active, read some Nancy Drews, of course, loved, find the characters in the highlight magazines but nothing that would have, retrospectively looking back, I would have ever thought, oh yeah, you're going to be a writer one day. You wait. None of that was like ever in my world.
So fascinating. I find that so fascinating because here you are now and you've got a trilogy of mystery books that are award winners as well. Like, that's fantastic. So you said your very first book was a memoir. So what
Mhm.
led you towards writing mystery then?
Well, my husband loves to read mysteries. I like some. I'm not a gore and guts, bloody kind of, I don't like to watch scary movies. I haven't even seen some of the classics because I don't like to get scared. So I like to watch them. But I like a little bit of a who done it or like trying to figure it out. Like I love to solve that kind of thing or think, oh, I think I know who did this, right? So I think for mysteries, I read some, obviously, some of my favorite authors, Louise Penny and Harlan Coben and, Reese Bowen, just a whole bunch. And then I also thought it just would be fun because I did work full time, as you know, or we'll talk about. And, I think all of us work full have had to or choose to work full time. There's kind of people you don't really like. You have to be very professional and like just go, oh, okay, thank you. And they say really mean and terrible things to you. And you're in my head thinking, wow, okay. So what I did decide is I'd kill them in my books. And since I was in transplant and organ donation for 35 years, I decided why would I waste that kill? And I could use their organs for transplant. And I kind of knew how to kill people to get their organs because that was my world. So I figured that would be kind of a fun whodunit, like they've said it's their mysteries with a mission and a side of humor, because I could take my clinical expertise, which I had, as a base and then create fun characters to put them on like the trail, like who killed these people or this person. So that's kind of how I decided to write mysteries. Plus, here in the Bay Area, we are lucky to have these great independent bookstores, which I'm guessing you also have in New Zealand. And they have conferences, they have workshops, mystery writing conference. When I was first playing with the whole idea, I was like, I'm going to go. I mean, it was, like I really tried to disappear because I'm thinking, I was like, I, 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 but I'm going because it's down the freeway, not too far. And there was all these authors, and I was like a kid in a candy shop and just listening. And then it was the first one I went to. I walked into one of the workshop rooms, and this one woman's like about 85, 90. She goes, I need to know what kind of bullet to kill this person with because I only have like an 18 millimeter, and I want to make sure that I'm thinking to myself, okay, I am in the right place. This lady, because you have to get it, with any book you write, you want to get it right.
Yeah.
But I just thought to myself, wow, okay. So I took a creative journey, an artist date, and went to a mystery writing conference with the concept in my head about the first book. And so the journey began.
I just find that so fascinating and so amusing because it's completely right. Like I completely understand that drawing characters from real life and then changing them up so they're not, that noticeable, but can be a little bit cathartic sometimes when bad things happen to certain characters, for sure.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
it is.
find
It's
that,
very cathartic.
yeah.
If your listeners are writers or want to be writers, but they are working full time, I only wish that I would have learned how to kill people fictionally when I was still in my career, because it would have been very cathartic, like you said, to just kind of, and you can always delete the whole
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
just whoever it is, and boom, they're done. But it's just very much getting it out of your system. And then if you are writing, you want to put that aside for a character component, at a later date, you still have that. But it's such a great skill, which I only discovered much later in life.
Yeah. And I know it's often said on like social media and things like that, but it's true. If you were to go through a writer's search history, we certainly can sometimes have quite unusual and dodgy and dark things that we often Google and that too. Yeah, so it is quite fascinating, the insight into how writers' minds work and all of that. So your profession as an RN and the organ transplant, dealing with that and everything, it really coloured your books quite a lot. Did that hinder you at all, almost knowing too much, or were you able to pare back the knowledge that you naturally brought to it so that the general reader could understand? Because my thoughts is that your understanding of organ transplants and all of that would be incredibly deep, but that's not necessarily the place for it in a book, where you need to know just enough, but not too much or give the reader too much information.
Good question. Very good question. So one of the things I did for the first book, Cut, which is when I was not retired, but I started working with a book coach. And what she called it was scaffolding. You could call it outlining or whatever. So it was just like chapter 1 is Sarah's point of view, and this is what should happen in chapter 2. And just little snippets that I created. And so I did that and used that kind of as a beginning of place, and then worked with her. And then the next decision after I wrote like what they say, the first terrible draft of the book, I got to meet what I didn't know was out there called a developmental editor. And a developmental editor, for those who don't know, is somebody who helps you as you're writing in case you're going off to the right or the left. Like I love to put food in my books because I like to eat good food. And so my developmental editor kept going, Amy, you got to take some of this food out because you want to solve the mystery, right? I got the story, I got the ideas. And one time when I was writing Cut, I was writing a scene with a burrito, a breakfast burrito with chorizo and eggs and all that. I made myself so hungry, I just stopped and went downtown, got the burrito, ate it, and came back and wrote. And her point was you want to keep them on the page. So some of the food didn't make the first book, it made the second book, and then the third book got some because I just can't have it. They got to eat. I mean,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there was that. So I book coach a development editor, and then she was helpful with me because I know so much in transplant that you're right to pare it down to make it consumable for someone who's never been in this world before, and hopefully they never will have to be in that world. Feedback from my readers has been that they feel like they got like a peek behind the curtain because I do accurately describe some of the things that happen at a transplant center, like selection and like, other activities that go on when people either are, being worked up, put on a list, transplanted, or donors, but not a lot. What I try to do is use my characters and dialogue to ask, well, what is a paired exchange? And oh, let me explain it to you. But simple, but have enough character, richness and plot that you do get a sense of transplantation through each book. And then I also have some, there one of them's a character, Jackie, she swears. There's some swearing, not gratuitous, and there's some drinking and there is some sex, but not gratuitous. I'm not, that writing that because yeah. So but I let the characters really carry some of the story, but it's really about at the end of the day, this trilogy is about two best friends. And one of them just happens to be in the transplant world and the other is not. And they met each other in nursing school, Jackie and Sarah. And so the story begins. And Sarah's single and a career girl, and Jackie's married, and her wife is the assistant medical examiner, and they have a little boy. And then I did a lot of character sketching with them just beforehand because you want to know what your character, well, sometimes you want to know what they're going to do, but when you're actually writing, they actually do stuff that was not on any outline I ever wrote. And I'm just like feeling like I'm the scribe, like, okay, I probably wouldn't get on that motorcycle drunk with this guy, but if that's where you're going, I'll follow you. Let's see what happens. So it is a sprinkle of transplantation. It is also a call to action for people who haven't, if they haven't decided their decision on organ and tissue donation, because it's about death as well. Just to encourage them to share it with their family members, whatever it is. So I weave a little bit in, thus the mission and mystery with the mission and a side of humor, but enough that people have really enjoyed it and then gone. My third book just came out and they went back and read the first and second. And then, of course, for me, the piece de resistance is when they say, and I decided to sign up to be an organ donor. If I never sold another book, I mean, to me, good. And I always say, make sure you tell your family, whatever your decision is. So because I was in that world for so long and loved it, 35 years, I am able to sprinkle in, they're themed. So it's all transplant, the 3 books, but also create a bunch of other fun stuff and use my imagination, which as adults, I think I forgot I had one for a long time because we get to do it when we're kids. And then we're like, okay, now you got to get serious and make a living and da 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 da.
Yeah.
So kind of opened up that imagination for me in a way that I hadn't expected.
How amazing. So did you write these books while you were still working in the hospitals and that, or had you left your profession and started writing these books afterwards?
I started the first one cut when I was working full time. And what was fun about that is that, well, my job was a park your life at the door job because it's 24/7 transplant, life and death. I was able to find a little spot for my creativity at home. But when I was working, then I would go to my meetings or issues we'd have, and I think, how would I explain this to a layperson? Like, what if you didn't know anything? And now I'm on the floor, I'm taking pictures of the bulletin board we have or the donor families. We send letters to the donor families or things. And then in selection, where we decide like where people actually get on the list. So I was able to be present to the routine of our world, but also in my writer's mind, start thinking, how would I explain that to you if you've never stepped a toe in that world? So that was kind of fun. And then, of course, working with development editor and some beta readers, they could give me feedback. So I did for the first book. I was working, I had it outlined. So when I retired, I was ready to dig in and actually write the book.
Wonderful. That's great. So I want to ask because we've talked a little bit about sometimes killing off characters or bad things happen to characters that sometimes might mimic interactions we've had with people in real life that we don't particularly like. And so we can use our creativity in a more positive way, I guess. But when it comes to characterization, do you find that you've also put a piece of yourself in your protagonists as well?
That's a good question because I think there's a little piece of me in Sarah, but I went to nursing school, graduated in 74. So both of my characters are kind of composites of my nursing school friends because we still see each other every year. And it's been a while. And so what's great about creating characters in your imagination is I obviously the transplant stuff is me. I mean, I
Mm,
know it and I love it. And I also want to put other things in each character that are interesting and different. And I have to do research, like Jackie in the first book was drinking rum. I'm not a big rum drinker. I actually don't really drink rum. But I told my husband to go to Beverages More and get some rum so I could at least taste it. And I made up a drink for her, rum with some coconut water and lime because, coconut water helps with dehydration. If you're going to drink alcohol, you want it. So I made up a whole drink for her. Now, I didn't really drink it, but I tasted it. So it's not bad. It just
yeah.
wouldn't be something I would order out. So there is pieces of me, there's pieces of my friends in there, but like little, just because you get to make your own composite of your
Mm,
characters, which is the creative part of writing, right? You can make
yeah.
up who you want. But yeah, and the folks who've read the book said that they want to be friends with Jack. They want to hang out with Jackie and Sarah because they
Yeah.
sound like they're a lot of fun. And they are kind of fun.
Amazing. What I'm really getting from you too is just how passionate you are about your books and writing in that. What for you is the most fun aspect? Like, what do you enjoy the most about being an author?
Well, one of the things I love to talk about them books with folks like you on your podcast. I love talking about the creative journey, about gremlins or self doubt or imposter syndrome, because I was for a long time like, you can't write a book. You didn't get your
Mm,
degree in English. This is me talking to me. You can't spell that great. What are you thinking? I mean, I had a lot of like negative self talk at first. And then I also surrounded myself with friends that go, just write the story down, get it out of your head. And the thing I've learned over time too is that nobody can write your story but you. If you're
mm,
thinking of writing a book that you want to write, there's no one else like you. And so the only person that could really tell the story that you want to tell is you. And doesn't mean that you have all the bells and the whistles and the degrees and the da 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 and the da. So it is true because nobody else could have written, cut, and match and hold. That was me. Not in an egotistical way, but in a combo way of who I was, how I showed up to the page with all my self doubts, with all the
mhm.
reasons I couldn't, and then had friends around say, I think you can and go, it's a craft, like, it's a craft
Yeah.
and you have to keep honing it over time. And it's hard. And I thought, why not give myself this assignment for when I retire until whenever I leave the planet? And because I think that that is a worthy thing to do. And it's not easy, but there is some really fun
Mhm.
parts. And when I'm first writing it and getting into it and writing all kinds of fun stuff, I mean, clearly it has to be edited.
Yeah.
But one of the most fun parts is just writing the first draft
Yeah.
and letting everything else away. Like there was a quote, it's just like putting sand in a sandbox from which you will make a castle. Somebody said that. And I thought, then the self judgment and all that stuff can go away. It does come back. I can verify. But I think just the first journey into just putting all those words on a piece of paper and it all came from you and just playing with it and having fun with it. That's part of the journey. And every writer has to do that. And many writers who are big names will still say, I don't know if this is going to be any good. I don't know if this is going to be good. And I'm thinking, well, if they're saying that, I might have a chance, right?
Exactly. Oh, that's amazing. I love that. So you've talked a lot about the imposter syndrome and all of that, which absolutely, I think all of us suffer from ongoing on and off, right? It's something that never really completely goes away. Was that the most challenging aspect for you, or was there another part to the writing or publishing process that you found more challenging? Like, what was your biggest challenge?
Well, that's a good question. Well, editing is hard. So when you do get into this place where you think I crafted a great story and I've worked with my development editor and copy editor, you have to really distill it down. And that means you have, they call kill your darlings or cut things out that aren't moving the story. What's moving the story forward? What does your reader want? Right? Because now I've had the luxury of throwing everything on the page. I think I have a good storyline and the characters are fun. And some of them won't leave. And that's okay because they can stay. I'm going to fight with them. And they're all obviously my imagination and on the page. But the hardest part is then editing. And I'll tell you what, one of the hardest parts is showing up, sitting in a chair and showing up, even on the days you don't feel like it. And it's, what am I thinking? Forget about this. And I don't know. And just showing up in the chair and sitting down. It's just whatever that is. It might not be great that day, but at least you showed up and you wrote something. And it might have been a sentence, but not to be so hard on myself about it. So that's a piece. And the other piece that's helped me really a lot over the last, couple of years with the pandemic and whatnot is accountability partners, which is a great idea. So I've been in a writing group with 3 other writers for 20 some years. We all write different genres and everything. And I also have a good friend who's writing her memoir. And we do these, what we call power hours, where we make a date like I did today with you on Zoom. And we log on and just say, hi, I'm working on this. You're working on that. We turn the camera off. We turn the sound off. We go about our business, right? And then we come back on after the end of the allotted time and just say, how did it go? And sometimes great. And sometimes, pull my hair out. But then if I know I tell you that I'm going to show up, even when I don't feel like it, I'm accountable to you. And so I don't want to let you down, even though maybe I just want to go downstairs and binge watch on something on Netflix or Hulu or whatever, because I want to keep my commitment. So I think accountability partner and, Zoom or power hours have been invaluable. And really, I'd say that's how I got the 3rd book done and out, because I had some friends, as soon as you declare you're going to write something, the universe kind of comes together. And then you got someone, I got tickets to go to the da-da-da. Or you want to go to lunch at da-da-da-da? And there's lovely, lovely options and invitations. But at some point when you do declare to your family and friends, look, I'm going to write and I'm blocking time. So if I don't call you back or I don't answer my phone, I'm writing. And if you condition people around you and they'll go, you are, oh my God, so great. They'll support you, but you got to tell them. For me, usually I'm an afternoon writer. In the morning, I have a bunch of other things I do, but that's kind of where I get in my rhythm. And whoever's in your world and you love them and care about them, but at the same day, you go, I'm writing today or Monday or Thursday or whatever you block on your calendar, writing time. But then you got to go sit down and write, wherever that is for you. So I'd say as a baby step, it's a huge step to get you to get on the page. And then as once you start writing, things start happening. And things happen that you would never expect to happen if you hadn't sat down and started to write.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I love that idea of the power hour. That's such a great idea. And I find it interesting that you said something that I have noticed time and time again for myself and for others, that whenever we decide to make that commitment to something, like writing a book, I find we often are tested. Just like you were saying, all of a sudden there's all these invites, there's all these things that pop up in our life that almost want to hold us back from that. It's almost like a test of our own commitment and dedication. Like, how serious are we about moving forward with this thing that we really want to do? But once we set those boundaries and we really reinforce how important it is to us, then I do find that things do start to naturally support us. Like, more and more people come out of the woodwork to be supporting and that. But there's always that first moment whenever we decide, right, I'm going to write a book. that it's almost like everything conspires against us a little bit. So I find that really interesting that you kind of mentioned that as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, it still can be a challenge. It's
Mm.
just like anything. You're gonna like, I'm gonna work out, or I'm gonna go swimming, or unless I put it on my calendar, I signed up for the class, I got my bathing suit, I got my snorkel, got my fins, I'm going. And like
Yes.
some days with everything, I don't really feel like
Yeah.
going today. And guess what? I'm going. Put the
Yeah.
swim bag in the car, get in the car. By the time I get there, get in the water, and I finish, I'm like, "Ah, I'm so glad I did that." But
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So interesting. So interesting. So I wanted to just go back to talking about writing mysteries. And this is a bit of a selfish question because this is where I'm kind of dabbling and pivoting a little bit at the moment, or just having a bit of a play anyway. But what do you think, from your perspective, writing mysteries are the real essential ingredients that make a mystery book successful? Because, I mean, you've won awards for your book. So, what do you think it really is, those key ingredients that set your stories kind of above other mysteries out there as well?
I think well-defined characters. I think knowing your character, a lot of times I've written character sketches on my characters, so I know what they eat, where they go, where they sleep, what they do for fun. Just getting to know them so well that you kind of know what they're going to do, but sometimes they do other things. I also make a storyboard. So I pretend that I'm casting these characters in a movie, and I go through a bunch of magazines. So, like my series, Jackie Larson would be played by Melissa McCarthy because
Oh,
I love Melissa McCarthy.
love it. Yeah.
So I cut a picture out of her, and I just go through and I think, oh, this would be handsome, and this is like Bob, and that's Sarah Silverman. And so I make a real storyboard, and I look at them at times when I'm like, well, what would she say? What wouldn't she say? And just like be with them in my writing room. And I am talking to a board. I'm not nuts, but so it's just kind of, and I'm a visual learner too. So I'm like, they're just kind of like they're my friends, right? They're in my room with me. I'm writing about them. I also think that a real hard lesson for me was show, don't tell. And my development editor really helped me. I can't just say, oh, the water was really cold and she had shiver, she was shivering. Well, how would you know someone was shivering? Maybe moving their body, quickly, or she glanced down and saw goosebumps on her arm, or finding tools that will help you like describe how it feels versus just telling people that. And then also having a compelling plot line. Like the first book's cut, it's can you buy your way to the top of the liver transplant list? And I was not going to write about that. But people kept coming up to me when I said, oh, I'm writing my mystery. And they're like, oh, and they'd whisper, can you really buy your way? And I'm thinking, well, I know you can't, but apparently the public doesn't. So I led with that. And then just being honest. So you have red herrings. So you're going to want, like, people, you don't want them to figure out who did it till the end, which is a challenge because I'm one of those people that want to show you, like, okay, here's it, because I like to just like tell you it all, right? But it makes you like you have to pull it out, right? And you want them interested. So one of the tools that I liked was rotating point of views. So I have 3 rotating point of views in my books. One's from Sarah, usually Jackie, and then a third person, depending on the book. What helps me is then when I'm in their point of view, I'm in their head. I can say, Sarah looked over at Jackie and could tell Jackie was crying, tears were coming down, but you're in that person's head. So that's the point of view that you can speak from. I can't tell you what Jackie's thinking because I'm not in her head in that chapter, right? So defining like the point of view, I think is key of your characters, or if it's first person or whatever you're choosing is key. And then humor. I like humor. I studied for a year at Second City in Chicago and graduated in improv for a year. So it's in part of me too, because I'm Irish German. So, that's a tool you gotta have in your toolbox. And with 6 kids, you gotta have something. Because I'm from a family of 6. So you gotta have some comedy going. So I think just showing up to your authentic self, which is what I did in my stories, and then being willing to take feedback, but careful about who you ask for. Like when you're
Mm,
first writing, just write yours, or if you're working with a development editor, work with them, but don't show it to everybody. I did make the mistake on the first book showing a part to my husband, who's very well read. And that was a mistake because he'll straight up, I didn't believe that. Or I'm like, okay, great. So I know this, I'm not going there anymore. He loves me, he cares about me, he loves my books. But
Yeah.
you have to keep your world small if you have a critique group and
Mm-hmm.
be careful because then you end up writing to everybody else, but not to what the story was you wanted. So selecting who it is you're going to show your creativity to with, here's what I need from you. I'd like you to read this piece and tell me specifically, not here, just read this. So I think having a good support team is key to success in writing a good book, having focus and belief in yourself, even when you don't, that you can do it. I think creating fun characters that are fun to you, because then you'll play with them on the page. And other people will want to play with them on the page, which has happened with Jackie and Sarah. And it's not easy. It's not for everybody. If you don't want to write a book, maybe write a little article. Maybe you're just going to write, an essay, whatever it is. But I think being kind to yourself, I've had to learn that because in, healthcare, it's black and white and, very focused and no room for any kind of mistake and everything's got to be rightfully so. But as a creative, giving yourself some space, time, and some compassion to enjoy it. And then the parts that are harder, like, not as hard, but reading it and editing and getting it, tuning it and tuning it and tuning it till you feel like, okay, this is good. But then finishing, like the first draft, just finish it. Doesn't matter if it works or doesn't, you've got it done because guess what? Now you get to go back and remodel. But don't keep stopping and stopping and stopping and rewriting when you're doing the first draft. Just get it out, excavate it. You got it done. It's still a piece of clay. And now you're going to make it even a little bit more defined, and then more defined. So give yourself permission to just throw it out on the page, have fun with it, knowing that it's going to be right there when you come back and do your remodel or your editing.
You just gave us so much golden pieces of advice there. Like, I just absolutely love all of that. That was just amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Amy. Like, there's just so much. I'm going to be putting this in the show notes and the transcript and everything too. These wonderful points that you've brought up. I also, just because you've just got so much wonderful advice going, I would love if you could share a little bit about well-being and that for authors. Like, what are your tips for creating a writing life or author life that we can really enjoy, that we really love? And I know you've already said some of these things, but I know you're also a wellness advocate, and I know you teach yoga and you meditate and you're passionate about manifestation and all the rest of it. So what are some of those key things that you think would really help a lot of us authors and writers to get the most from our writing lives?
Well, find a place you'd like to write. If you don't have room in your house or your apartment or wherever, maybe you decide I'm going to a coffee shop and wearing headsets. You don't really have to be listening to anything. Nobody knows. But find a cozy place for you. I'm grateful I have a writing room. So I have like my vision boards on the wall of what I aspire to and hope to have and be. I think that's important. I also have a little fountain in my office. I like to listen to music, but not with words. So they kind of gets me going. And sometimes I listen to symphony or, it depends, a soundtrack from a movie that just brings me joy. And then I've kind of set my writing room up. It's like a cozy, yummy place. You can have a heater in case it's cold, because it can be. So your environment is one that you look forward to. It's like you're creating that little space for your soul and your creativity to kind of sit in. And if you don't have a space or even a corner in your house or your apartment, then find that little yummy, cozy coffee shop where you can just put your headsets on and get on your keyboard. Because goodness knows there's tons of those too. So the space piece, I think, is kind of a nice, yummy treat to go, wow, look at you. And I got a good cup of tea because I always like to drink tea. And just little like creature yummy things that, they don't need to cost money. They don't need to cost, but that they're nurturing. So when I'm sitting here and I have my storyboard and my diffuser with some essential oils going, I got my fountain in the back, and I got my do not disturb. I'm writing a bestseller on.
I love that.
Because, yeah. So, those are some pieces that I think support you to look forward to doing your work, your writing. I think that's important. And it may sound like trivia, but you're setting the stage for your comfort so that you can, and you're sitting in a chair. So you do have to move around. I do have a fun little hand yoga thing that I teach a lot of people. So I'll make sure I send you the link if you want to share it to your readers. But
Yes,
because our
please.
hands are down like all the time, like this, on a keyboard or driving or you're falling, you're hunched over. Part of the reason I'm teaching chair yoga is because I want people to sit up in their chair and roll their shoulders back and down and pull their belly button down and make sure their feet are on the ground. And I do a lot of work with teachers and educators just to move them in and breathe. So part of my wellness practice is in the morning. I always try to get up and do some morning pages from, just 3 pages of, which is really a key I would recommend because the end of my third book came out of me writing morning pages. And if your readers don't know what that is, it's basically another tip and trick from the artist's way where you just top of mind, doesn't have to spell, doesn't have to do it, just write what's going on. And what's really cool about that is it takes everything out of your mind and clears it. And then some other new stuff can come up.
Mm.
And it really works because when the ending of the third, I thought I knew the ending of the third book, and it wasn't the ending that I ended up with because I did the morning pages and something came to me and I'm like, oh my goodness, I never even thought that because it's just like sparking that. So I meditate twice a day and I do some morning pages and some yoga, breath and stretch. Doesn't have to be yoga. Don't worry, you don't do a headstand and a handstand and all that monkey business. And breathing. I find that a lot of us, including myself, do shallow breathing, meaning we aren't using our entire lungs. And so just connecting with breath. And then I have an egg timer on now I don't listen to it all the time. I know there's egg timers on your phone, but sometimes I just hit, because you're supposed to stand up every 20 minutes. So when you were in the middle of it, stand up for a minute. And I'm always glad I do because I'm like, whoa, I'm not a young whippersnapper anymore. But you do need to move and make sure your joints are moving and all that. So I think getting up and moving, and if you just stand up for a minute and then sit down, these are just like little things that are helpful for your body and your mind. And then you keep moving forward. So, I mean, those are just a few little things that I think are little tips and tricks. And if you don't remember what I do, if you saw my computers, I put Post-its. I should put another one up here because remember to stand up.
Yeah.
Don't forget to breathe,
Yeah.
just simple things that breathe deep from your belly. Those little things help rejuvenate your body and therefore your circulation and therefore your thought process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think they're all key too to, increasing your productivity and increasing your creativity because when we're feeling good physically, emotionally, all of that, I think we can do more. We can tap into that creative energy better. We can, achieve more, which is really cool. Thank you for sharing those. That's amazing. That's awesome. So I'm wondering then what's next for you because your 3 books that you've got in your mystery series, I've seen them labeled as a trilogy. So is there any more in the series coming out or are they staying as a trilogy? What do you have planned as your next endeavor?
Well, what was interesting about my trilogy, when I wrote the first book and I kept going to mystery writing conferences because I love them and people are interesting. And I learned a lot about topics I know nothing about. But I decided after the first book, I got a literary agent. I signed with her and she wanted me to finish this trilogy first. And then she wanted me to write a romantic comedy, which I've never written. But I gave myself a fun homework assignment during the pandemic and watched every romantic comedy I could find on TV and took notes on them. Like, what did I like? What didn't work? Because, that's a prescriptive one too. They hate each other. They might like each other. They hang out and then they get in a big fight. Go figure at the end. Hi, they're marrying. Are they going out? Or sometimes, So what's next for me are 2 things. I'm giving myself a pinch of a break between now and mid-January because the third book came out and I've been on a book tour. We have all 3 audios now. So audiobooks are available. So that was a bit of work, but an interesting, really fun again, looking at that as I'm going into this world of audiobooks I know nothing about, and I learned so much. So that was fun. And hearing somebody read your story,
Yeah.
it's like, wow, that's really cool. Had fun with that. And then I'm going to re-release my memoir next year because I wrote it so long ago and a lot of people have read it and want to know, like, so what happened? What's going on? Kids? What happened to the lake? All those things. And I'm going to do a re-release of Aunt Mary's Guide and an audio. So that's on my plate for 2023. And then getting the first draft of the rom-com done. It's very fun. It's very frivolous. There's no medical. There's no Sarah and Jackie. There's no doctor. I don't even think I have a doctor character, and I'm okay with that. This is more lighthearted. I mean, there's some fun stuff, and it also partially about a caterer, a young gal who starts out wanting to be a caterer because my development editor goes, next book you write has got to be about food because just write about it and you keep having to cut it. I have to cut it out. So this time I get to write about all the food I want, good and bad.
Wonderful.
But I did some research in Chicago because the rom-com takes place in Chicago, where I'm originally from. And so I'm giving myself permission to have some real fun lightheartedness with this rom-com. And I'm excited to see. I mean, I know the characters. I did the outline. They're something else too. But I've decided that this is going to be a little, I don't have to fact check and make sure all the data, with the transplant and all that, because I'm from there and I want to make sure everything was accurate as I leave it in. But this one, I just made up this whole world. And so I get to have some fun with it.
And I think we need that sometimes, just having fun, just making sure that
Yes.
our writing is fun. And sometimes that means pivoting genres and all the rest of it. But that's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope to travel to, I'll be traveling at the end of the year. So that's going to be fun.
Oh, wonderful. Well, it has been such a blast chatting with you, Amy. I'm wondering, can you just share with our listeners how people can connect with you, where they can find your books, how they can stay in touch with you, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I would love to. So my website is Amy, AMY, S as in Sam, Peele, P as in Peter, EELE, amyspeel.com. And they can go there and they'll see snippets of, what I do for wellness advocacy. I mostly work with educators right now on that, just helping them take deep breaths and move into their body and be grateful. And they love it. And then I also do a lot of speaking, and then my books are all there and a little bit of my background if they're curious about, from whence I came. And they can always contact me through there. My email's in there and samples chapters if they want to just see if this might be for them. There's not a lot of blood and guts in my books because I don't really write that way. So you don't have to worry about that. Even though there's a scalpel on the cover, cut, don't worry. You're not in the operating room watching a bloody operation. I might have a little conversation going on in the operating room, but you won't have to worry about that. And just reach out. And if they have questions, I think what I love about my writing community and authors and things like what you're doing with the podcast is that we really want to support each other to be successful and whatever that looks like. And if you have a bunch of, oh, you can't do that either in your head or people around you, find those one or two people that think you can do it and say, I want you to be my partner. Cause I have a couple good friends who I call and my friend Betsy and I have named our gremlin, and my gremlin's the one that says, forget it. You can't. What do you think? Her name is Ursula. And Betsy's friend for kind of gremlin is Dominique. And so I'll just call sometimes when I'm just like, I can't do this. And I'm hearing all this negative chatter. I said, oh, hi. Yeah, Ursula's talking to me. And she'll say, put her on the phone. Now we made them up, but we named them. When you could say, okay, you have your time. Go ahead with all the mischigas, all the craziness. Go ahead. And then I'm going to start writing them again. So honor that those going to know that they might come up. I haven't met anyone who's a creative that doesn't have gremlins, and that's okay. But they don't get to drive the car. They get to sit in the back seat. Don't give them the steering wheel. So I think it's important to acknowledge the reality and give yourself the gift of the time and the environment for your creative side. Because I believe all of us have a creative side. And I believe all of us have imaginations that we might not have exercised as aggressively in our life as we did when we were kids. And know that it's in there. You just need to give it a little water maybe a little fertilizer, and you'd be surprised what happens.
That is such fantastic advice. I just so appreciate you coming on the show today, Amy, and sharing all of that just wonderful goodness. And I love that idea of naming your gremlins and giving them that opportunity to have their wine and, say all those negative things and get it out of their system and then close the door on them. Such a good idea. Fantastic. I'm going to be making sure that your books and everything is in the show notes so people can connect with you. And I'm sure you also want to, while you're here, encourage everybody, if they're not already an organ donor, to make sure that they become an organ donor. That's so important. So if they have the capability to do that too.
And if they don't want to be, just tell their family either way, because then their family knows, God forbid that something happens and the family's like, well, I don't know. We never talked about it. Whatever decision everybody makes about organ and tissue donation is their personal decision, and they just need to share it with their loved one. I think that's really the most important thing, because here in the States, we have about 100,000 people waiting for transplants, and it's a gift of life, and it is a gift of life. So I think, and following the passion of your listeners, whatever their passion might be, I think is a gift to themselves. So that's how I would close it out. And thank you for having me. This was really a fun conversation.
Oh, so fun. So fun. I'll definitely have to have you back on again. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you.
Takeaways from today's show. 1. Consider using your day job and people in your life as inspiration for setting, plot, and character. Have fun with it. 2. Don't be afraid of killing people fictionally as a cathartic process. 3. To move through self-doubt and imposter syndrome, surround yourself with cheerleaders and write the book you want to write. Get the words down. Nobody can write your story. 4. Utilize accountability partners and power hours to avoid procrastination and get your writing done. 5. An essential ingredient to writing a successful mystery is having well-defined characters. Know your characters inside and out. Consider casting your characters and making a storyboard. 6. Ensure you have a compelling plot line. Plant those red herrings, show not tell, and write from an appropriate point of view to make your story engage the reader. 7. Be open to feedback, but discerning as to who you show your work to and get critique from. 8. Create a sacred space for your writing. Make it comfortable, appealing, and inspiring. 9. Move your body often. Consider chair yoga and focus on your breathing to enhance your author well-being. 10. Utilize Julia Cameron's morning pages as part of your morning routine to prep for the day. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. Amy has generously shared a hand yoga video she created, which is wonderful for breaking up long writing sessions. So you'll find that link in the show notes. And if you'd like to support this show, there are so many ways you can do so. Leaving a review, following on socials, or subscribing to the Alchemy for Authors newsletter are all great ways of doing so. And if you're feeling particularly generous, for a few dollars you can also buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Jo Buer. As always, you'll find all links in the show notes and the full transcript on my website. And I will leave off by wishing you a wonderful, productive, creative, and healthy writing week ahead.